And are you refreshed?
Yes.
Good. Now what?
Thank you, Abraham. I've got a couple things. One is very related to the business thing. I was retired for a couple years after 25 years in special education, and somehow find myself now back in that same kind of field, but at a children's mental hospital, which is a lot different from public education in the sense of, in the hospital hearing about how bad the schools are, and when I was in the schools hearing about, well, this mental hospital doesn't help these kids because they come back to us and they're the same. But one of the challenges is there's been a lot of change happening in this hospital over the last year and a half. We have a new CEO, and there's clearly patterns of making decisions, of lines of communication that have been cattywampus. And we're implementing now a new system which is called the sanctuary model. And as I listened to you talk with the other business person, I thought, I don't think the sanctuary model in itself is going to be enough to really shift things at the hospital in the way it needs to, and to shift away from we get children there that come through horrific kinds of experiences. So, it's always feeling sorry for the children and trying to keep them from committing suicide. And so we put them on drugs and all those things. So that piece is conflictual for me. But just the process of change in a way that really is going to enable us to support the kids.
Often our answers are not satisfying because you can't get there from there. And so it might be helpful to step back just a little bit and acknowledge that whatever anyone is living is causing them to personally ask for something that is precise for them. And that the answer for the most disenfranchised, the answer for the most abused, is the same answer as the answer that we're giving to those of you who are just wanting to be more deliberate in your creating. And that is, you have to find a way of being a vibrational match to what you're asking for. So of course, sometimes in those extreme situations, it would seem that there would be even less of a likelihood of them ever finding a feeling that felt good, even though that's what is required. You've got to find some way of letting in the answers that you're asking for. It would seem that it is less likely for someone who's really in a traumatic situation to do that, except for this: strong situations cause stronger asking, and stronger asking brings in stronger non-physical resources. And so if you can not get swept up, you see, whenever we have conversations about relationships, whether they are work environments or personal relationships or parent and children or girlfriend and boyfriend, the thing that is most known by us that we would like to relate to all of you in a way that you could really hear it is that when you're trying to deal with it in the physical ways that you are, it's just different faces in different places, but the same sort of thing keeps happening. So it works out this way: I'm living something I don't want, which causes me to ask in a stronger way. So it's like I've put a strong engine on my train that's a desire engine that's going that way. But my reality is such that I don't believe my desire, so now I put a strong engine on my train going in opposition to my desire. And so things get worse for me, which cause me to ask in a stronger way. So I put a stronger desire engine on, but things don't look any different to me, so I put a strong belief engine on. And so I'm pulling against myself, because the very thing that makes me want it to be different is the very thing that keeps me from letting it be different. And then everyone just runs around and blames each other and put another program in place and another program in place. But unless there is a fundamental understanding that you are getting what you are thinking about, in a very strong sense, what we want to say to you relative to the question about your politics, or relative to questions about children being seemingly displaced, or in this question about school systems and the way that they are being administered to the children. What we would like to say to all of you is that in the same way that the sun comes up every morning, that this non-physical process is happening, that step one is happening all over the place, whether you know that it is or not. That people in all situations, whether it is simple situations or complex situations or good situations or terrible situations, wherever you are is where you are. And from that important place of wherever you are asking for improvement wherever you are. And rather than as a human race trying to compare the rightness or the wrongness of the things that you're asking for, if we could just get those of you in this room just for a minute to accept that asking is asking and that it is heard. So it doesn't matter if it's what you deem a big question or a small question, a critical question or a minor question, something that just improves my life a little bit or something that saves lives. It doesn't matter what the question is. It is always heard by source and answered by source, and it is always put into this vibrational reality, and it is always tended to, and the energy that creates worlds is on it, is on it, is on it. So step one is causing the improvements that you're all looking for. Step one and step two are happening even in your ignorance of them. So somewhere along the line, someone has to find a way of getting into the receiving mode. Well, all of you will when you have what you call your death experience. When you leave this physical body and reemerge into non-physical, you will become a perfect blend to everything that you've asked for. And all those desires will be understood and known by you. We don't think you should have to wait until you croak to get there. We think it would be nice if you could find some vibrational path to that. But what all of these conversations, especially in this time in which you are living, must be helping you to come to an awareness of is that no matter what anybody else is living, and no matter how much disruption or not there seems to be, whether it is what you call good times or bad times, there are always those who thrive in the worst of times, and there are always those who suffer in the best of times. And so it's time for you to stop blaming the times for what's going on. Stop blaming what's going on around you as you have your knee-jerk reaction to it. And it's time to begin accepting that contrast is a good thing, whether you like it or not, and that you have control over how great the contrast gets in your own life. If you ask for something and don't allow it, you're going to ask stronger again. And if you still don't allow it, you're going to ask stronger again until you're going to get two aspects of yourself asking and asking for what you want and asking for what you believe, until you're going to set yourself up for a world of hurt. It's just the way law of attraction is responding. And law of attraction is responding fairly to everyone. You get what you think about. You broadcast a signal, law of attraction brings it back. So if any of you are wanting to be a mentor or a teacher or an uplifter to anyone, then you must see that your work has to be. There's no other remedy. Your work is to soothe them into letting in what they're asking for. And so many of these programs don't do any soothing. They just stand in the blaming mode. Well, we used to do it that way and that was better, but now we're doing it this way and this is worse. And we say blah, 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 blah. Nothing is changing except that the asking is stronger, which is a good thing, you see. We would like you, if you can, to step back from the details of what you're observing around you and try to accept it as more good than it is not good. And then do your best to soothe yourself into allowing the universe to treat you the way you deserve to be treated. Because it's only through the clarity of your own example that you will ever be able to teach someone else. And you can't take some extreme situation that no one wants for themselves and no one wants for anyone else, and start there. You've got to start with easier places. You've got to show yourself that law of attraction is. You've got to hold some thoughts about some things and watch what comes to you, and then hold some thoughts about some other things and watch what comes to you. You have to teach yourself that law of attraction is a real thing, because you cannot just take our word for it. You have to teach yourself that your guidance system exists. You have to convince yourself that how you feel, what your mood and attitude is, equals your point of attraction. And you have to show yourself that you and you alone can shift the way you feel about things. No one is going to feel any self-empowerment until you apply what you know as the rules or the laws of the universe, and you see them consistently work for you. Because as long as it's all left to what committee funds what money and what they do with what program and what book is written and who reads it and how many people are in what program, as long as it's left to all of those incredibly huge number of moving parts, you're just going to remain in a quagmire where you begin to not believe in your overall well-being because there are so many clamoring about not having it for themselves. You got to show yourself that well-being abounds for you. And then you've got to broadcast that through the clarity of your example so that others may see it, you see. So while we know that there is always room for soothing no matter where you stand, and there's always a desire for you to soothe and uplift no matter what situation you're standing in. If we were standing in any of your physical shoes, we would not for a moment allow ourselves to get twirled up in legislature or rules and laws and committees and all of that stuff where there might be a desire for some improvement, but there is not a belief in it. We would do what water does when it seeks its level. Water will always find its path of least resistance. You're discovering that a bit around here lately. Will always find its path of least resistance, you see. There are these laws that just assure that. And so we would not, in visiting with you, spend any time really encouraging that you try this or that you try that or that you try that. We'd go to something much more fundamental. We would like to say to you, as this powerful teacher that you are, that you've got to, whether you walk away, as in the last discussion that we have, from a situation, from an environment that is not yielding any substantial, successful results, whether you walk away from it or whether you stay right smack dab in the middle of it, in either case, you've got to reset yourself. You've got to reset yourself so that something can occur to you so that you're ready to be ready, to be ready, to be ready, to be ready. And maybe, if it's in your vortex, maybe that means that you will be the one who will be so inspired to explaining to others a way that will assist them, that the momentum will be on your side and you will lead to an entirely new program. Maybe that's what's in your vortex, and maybe that's what will come of it, that will only come if you do that reset that we're talking about. Or maybe you'll be one that just understands that you can be of value wherever you stand, and maybe you'll just get ready to soothe wherever you are. Maybe you'll be less willing to stand before a child who feels disadvantaged and taken advantage of and is hurting and by larger standards even broken. Maybe you'll just fixate on that person and you'll acknowledge the power of who they are, and you'll see it so clearly through your own eyes of alignment that they cannot help but catch glimpses of their own power through your eyes. Maybe it'll be one-on-one. Maybe they'll be writing books and talking about you decades after you're gone. Maybe that's the way that it will come about. But in any case, you have to carve out for yourself some measure of satisfaction. And you just have to ask yourself, are those committee meetings satisfying? Is it satisfying to hear what wasn't working? Is any of that satisfying? And if it's not satisfying, are you in sync with your inner being? And if you're not in sync with your inner being, are you accomplishing anything? And is that not really what we're talking about here? Isn't all this other stuff just the excuse to have the conversation that I'm not in sync with my inner being and I'm using this as my excuse to not be fully empowered myself? Yeah.
And what I really want is to shift, because I have a sense that really serving the kids will look way, way different than anything I've learned about caring about people.
Tell us more about serving.
If I can be of value, real value to the kids.
And how is that possible?
I mean, it goes back to something I've heard you say before of, if I think they need me, I have nothing of value to offer them. But if I can, in fact, see them as you just spoke.
So if what we've been talking about all day, and you've been getting it, is getting back to your core sense of well-being and then just maintaining it. I only have to hold it for 17 seconds before it gets more, and then another 17 seconds before it gets more. So if what we've been talking about, and it has been all day here today, is you getting back to that place of well-being and holding it long enough that it begins to get some traction and some momentum, doesn't it follow that if you could see someone differently than anyone has ever seen them, and differently than they have seen themselves, and you can do it for 17 seconds, and then another, and then another, and then another, isn't it utterly logical that that is the way that they will begin to shift their understanding of who they are? You hooking with your inner being and their inner being joining you too, and you holding them as your object of attention, knowing their well-being, not questioning it, not looking at the absence of it out there, because out there doesn't matter. That's old news. We're talking about right now. We're talking about soul to soul, spirit to spirit, person to person, eye to eye, here and now, where all of the power is in the real now, in what really is, you knowing their value and you loving them unconditionally, loving them, knowing who they are. It is our promise to you, they will be forever changed if they can get a whiff of that. But you got to distract yourself from the other minutia before you can even take the time to do that, you see. People are so eager. Oh, we love you so much. But here is something that you do continually. You want to jump over all the getting ready to be ready and be ready, be ready, be ready, and be ready, and do it now. All right, kids, here's what's up. You're not happy, you ought to be. Do these things and do them now. Or you're not learning and you should be learning, and here's a test and you're not failing it. Study and do it now. There's no connection anywhere along there. They're not ready for that. No one's ready for that. And then you count yourself as not powerful or as not good at it. What you want to start saying to these kids is, I'm never again going to ask you to defy the laws of the universe any more than I would ask you to step out the door and fly away. Because I think the law of gravity is going to do its normal thing with you. And I think the law of attraction is going to do its normal thing with you and all of the rest of us too. They might not be ready to hear it, but they sure are ready to feel it, you see.